works the way I think it will. We are live. I need to adjust this slightly because you're not quite in the frame. There we go. I think everything's working. We're here, both on camera for the first time on stream.
Oh, the worst idea.
Well, you can't see me unless you watch the stream, but I can see you.
I'm watching the stream, but with a really big delay. So,
cool. So you can see me like vaguely gesticulate in no related way.
Yeah, and it's kind of putting me off because the time delay between what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing and I'm seeing myself as well. So
maybe it's best just to think of it as like a phone call and just don't bother with the video on your side.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can see myself and
cool.
get paranoid.
Does it all look okay on your end?
I hope so.
Cool.
I mean, I'm just using the Discord chat, so
cool. Then we're good to go. So, hello and welcome to the first episode of our brand new review show called the Bunyip Review. Evening Steltech. Today,
Steltech.
we are going to be talking about some TV shows, some video games, and some movies that we've enjoyed in the last month. They don't necessarily have to have come out in the last month. Just we have enjoyed them in that time. This one's going to be a bit even more laxed on that because obviously we've never done this before, so it won't just be in the last month, it will be in recent memory. But going forward, we'll try and keep it to something that we've enjoyed in the last month. And TV shows, we're including Netflix shows in that as well, pretty much.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because otherwise we'd never watch
I've got
anything.
nothing else to talk about yet.
Although, actually, your show isn't a Netflix show today.
You're right.
Yeah, so I guess without further ado, we should get started. So for each category, we've brought one thing each. I'm going to go first, and then Jonas is going to go, apart from movies where I've cheated, and I've actually bought 3 movies. But that's because it's my show and I can do whatever I want. My show for this week, my TV show for this week, is A Series of Unfortunate Events, the Netflix TV series. They released. I didn't actually check when they released it, but they released the 3rd and final series relatively recently on Netflix.
Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
It wasn't. Yeah, it was close to the new year, as far as I remember. And I've spoken to quite a few people about this show, and a lot of people, they seem to drop off quite early in watching it. I know a lot of people have, like, I've spoken to them and I've said, like, I really love it, and they've said, oh, actually I watched 1 episode or 2 episodes and I didn't really like it. Yeah.
Sorry, I know I shouldn't interrupt, but when you say they dropped off, do you mean season 1 or in season 3 specifically?
No, season 1, right at the beginning. And so my first review of A Series of Unfortunate Events is partially a review and partially an impassioned plea to get people to watch the show because it's better than it comes across in the first episode. So I'll give a brief summary of the plot for people who don't know what it is. It's based on a series of books, and it's about 3 children called Sunny, Klaus, and Violet, who their parents. You're posting in chat, Jonas. You're going to throw me off immediately. Their parents die in a mysterious fire, and they are taken into the care of a man called Olaf, who is supposedly their distant uncle or something like that. And the rest of the show is about them trying to escape this character Olaf, who is attempting to inherit the fortune they were left by their late parents, and getting passed from guardian to guardian in a series of strange and unfortunate events. And the reason I think a lot of people drop off it is because the first 2 episodes aren't very good. And I'll admit this as someone who loves the show. They are genuinely the worst 2 episodes of the entire series. And I think a lot of people, they go into that and they think it's sort of a childish sort of kiddie show that doesn't really have much going for it, and the plot is very wonky in the first 2 episodes. But what I really love about this show is that despite being quite kid friendly, it has a really great sort of running mystery thread throughout the entire thing, to do with who set the fire to in the house that their parents burned down in, and this big sort of conspiracy secret society mystery thread running through the background, that never really overpowers the main story of these kids going through these series of unfortunate events, but sort of it makes it adds like enough sort of spice to make the whole thing worth watching, because you get that sort of like the meat of the story being these kids having a horrible time finding out that all of the adults in this world are basically useless at everything, but there's this sort of nice sort of background story of this secret society that then comes into its own towards the end of the second and throughout the third series. But yeah, so I basically I want to encourage people to watch past those first two episodes and get into it. Other things I love about it is the visual style of it is absolutely incredible. They took a hint from the film, the Jim Carrey film, in that the style of the whole thing is designed to look a lot like the illustrations in the books. So everything's kind of sort of creepy and sort of over exaggerated. In the first episode, you have Olaf's house, and the way they've used color in that to basically that they've like drained the color out of everything apart from the things to do with the kids is brilliant. I feel like the feeling of misery that these kids are going through and everything sort of comes out in everything from the sets to the costume designs of the characters and everything like that. But yeah, I would say it's something I recommend trying to get into, and persevering through the first two episodes basically is my review of this show. Have you watched it at all, Jonas?
Yes. So I am not finished or up to date exactly. I've got to season 3, and I've got a few episodes into season 3. So I'm like, I don't know how many episodes there are in total, actually. But so either way, I'm
the way they do it is
two-thirds.
Yeah, the way that they do it is that every 2 episodes is a book from the book series. Which is why I say that the first 2 episodes are the worst, because they're based on the first book, which is I never read the books, but I know people who have, and they've said that the first book is the worst book of the series, which is unfortunate because it is sort of the thing that's supposed to entice you into it. But I feel that the problem with that first episode is that it doesn't bring in this mystery plot, which is, I think, one of the main draws of it, and it spends a lot of time setting up all the characters, and I think a lot of the joy in the show is the running gags and the knowledge of how all the characters work. So there's this running gag throughout the show that people who are intelligent and like books tend to be good people, and bad people tend to be worse spoken and worse at grammar and things. And so they have this running gag of good characters explaining the words that they say, and then Olaf explains the words he says but always gets them wrong. And these little running gags that build up to, by the time you're in the third series, almost every line is a running gag from a previous episode. They take so long to build up, and that they aren't really present in that first episode, that I feel like you can feel a bit sort of both overwhelmed by the style of it and underwhelmed by the plot at the same time. Yeah.
Sorry if I'm making subtle noises. I'm just adjusting my setup a bit subtly. Post stream start. Yeah, I think for me, one of the strongest elements of a series of unfortunate events is the series element of it, in the sense that the characters are constantly changing their location, and the supporting cast is constantly changing. So in every episode, you're meeting like a new quirky character that has a new set of like personality quirks. And the main thing that you were talking about is they always add more to the mystery. Like they always know a little bit more about the secret society, or they manage to say just one or two things in their 2 episode run that heavily hints that there's something far greater going on that the kids are not nearly yet aware of.
And
But
it's
because
it's paced so well as well, in that you never feel like you're not learning enough, but you're never learning so much that you just get information dumped on you.
Yeah, well, let me look. So season 1's got 8 episodes. Season 2 has 10 episodes. And I think season 3 has 10 episodes. 7 episodes, actually. So that is, what, 25 episodes?
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Am I right? I don't know. And
let's just say yes. This isn't a math stream. This is we don't need to know.
I'm not going to fact check my own maths. But no, it's like, and over those episodes, you are really getting like slow trickled into this overarching plot of why these kids' parents were caught up in something and what their real relationship, like I say real relationship to Count Olaf, but it's like, why does Count Olaf know the Baudelaires? Why was he even registered as their uncle when he clearly isn't trustworthy? Where do his motivations originally come from? Like, how did he come to be the scheming bastard that he is?
Yeah, I think it's one of those interesting stories where almost the main plot isn't really the main plot. Like you are ostensibly following these kids through this series of unfortunate events, but that's not really what the show's about. The show's about this secret society.
I mean, where I'm watching it, there are 2 characters who come in and they are saying to you, the audience, and other characters in the show, why do you care so much about the kids? They are not the main plot line. They are not the thing you should care about.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, but still, you don't know who these characters are. You don't know what their motivations are. You don't know why they're saying that. And for a very family-friendly show, it's like, oh, I can't figure it out because I haven't been given all the information, which is fine. And
they also have that clever narrative device, which is that and this was the same with the books, is that the books are written by a fake author called Lemony Snicket, who is a character in the show and the books. And so he is telling you the story of the Baudelaire orphans, but he is also a character in this story and is having his own story sort of in the background of the scenes where he is telling you the story. And I've always thought that like stories that can have that many layers to them, I think sort of stand the test of time, because they can be rewatched and you can see new things in them. And I think that this show does that incredibly well. I think they were major. They had a major benefit of both having the original writer involved in the series and also having everything already written. I think like one of the problems that Game of Thrones has is that some people can feel like, oh, they're headed to a point that they sort of didn't realize they were going to when they started. Whereas this show very much
it knows the complete recipe.
It knows exactly where they're headed, and everything that happens in the first series links to the last episode of the third. And that is, I mean, it's not the most complicated of plot by the end of the third series, because it is still ostensibly a children's show. But it is a satisfying ending because everything feels like it's been built on. Exactly, the anti-Lost is a perfect way of saying that. Is that it definitely feels like they had a plan from the very beginning. They could have written the last episode when they wrote the first episode. Like it definitely feels that kind of cohesive the whole way through.
I don't want to. I feel like we're talking about this maybe a little bit too long, but
yeah.
I just want to highlight as well. I love Neil Patrick Harris as an actor.
He's very good in it.
I think he's an incredible personality,
and inspired casting for that part as well.
Yeah,
think.
because he is like Count Olaf is an overly dramatic character. Like the point of his character, he thinks he's an actor. He thinks he's the best actor in the world. He thinks he's got all this talent. He's been to the theater.
He's basically the dark version of real life Neil Patrick Harris.
Exactly. If Neil Patrick, like, yeah, the darkest timeline.
Yeah, yeah.
Patrick Warburton as Lemony Snicket is so incredible. I love
Perfect
Patrick
casting
Warburton
again.
as a voice actor. He's just got that perfect. He's got like the deep tone to his voice that's able to communicate like an individual who's like down, serious, strong, sort of has something very serious to say, but you know his voice from a comedy perspective, like you know him from Family Guy and things like that.
And I was saying this about, and if when Better Call Saul comes back, I'll definitely be talking about that on this show. But there is this great. It's always great having comedians play dramatic roles because they can take that bigness and that like overacting, and then they can tone it down. And I think it's a lot harder for dramatic actors to bring it up to a comedy level. And I think Patrick Warburton does that amazingly, and that his voice is absolutely perfect for a narrator, and he has that control over his voice and his movement that really sort of fulfills that character very well, and makes it just a satisfying character.
And his character is constantly as in the role of Lemony Snicket, the narrator, he's always coming in and telling you, the audience, that you shouldn't be enjoying this. Go watch something else.
Which is such a great like theme.
Really sad.
Yeah.
And it's pretty consistent. And to answer Steltek's question, yes, we have both seen the Jim Carrey film, I think.
Yeah, I've seen it, yeah.
And I loosely remember it, but the thing is it didn't stick in my mind much because I knew it was incomplete. I remember it has the first three.
It's the first three, yeah.
Yeah, the first three books and family members, but I don't really remember how it ended. I don't really remember what like.
I think the thing with the film is that they had some of the same problems as the TV show, in that the first third of the film basically is the first book, and it is the weakest part of the film. They didn't do it any better than the TV show did, but they almost sort of set the tone for how you would do a version of this on screen, and it almost feels like a prototype version of the TV show, in that honestly some of the sets could have been reused.
One to one. Yeah.
I was watching it with a friend when I watched the film after I'd watched the first series of the TV show, and for a while I genuinely thought it was the same girl playing Violet, until I realised they were made so far apart that it couldn't have been, because she was too old to play Violet at that point. They managed to cast a girl who looked pretty much identical and sounded pretty much identical in the same role. And I think that film basically set the tone and style that the TV show built on, which I think is a really good thing.
Shout out to the child actors of Violet and Klaus Baudelaire. That's Melina Weissman and Louis Hines.
Also, who plays the baby? Because the baby is so good.
So I was looking at this. It looks like it's a girl called... No, that can't be right. So, okay, the voice actor for the baby is called Tara Strong.
Yeah, she plays Bubbles in Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at that, but it doesn't tell me who the physical actor is.
Maybe babies can't have IMDb pages.
Presley Smith.
Okay, well, she's very good. For a baby actor, she's actually very, very good.
Well, in season 3, she actually starts getting like
she actually
direction.
Well, yeah, but she's getting older, isn't she?
Exactly. So that's fantastic to see.
Speaking of Jim Carrey, we have talked about this for quite a long time, so we should move on to our second show, which is Jonas's show.
Yeah, Jonas's show. What a great show that is.
But yeah,
go watch it.
Cool.
Okay,
right,
so
let's move on to TV show number 2. Cool.
May I?
Yes.
Go
for it.
The show I would like to talk about is a show called Kidding. Kidding is it's a show that I heard about on another podcast, and it sort of came out of nowhere for me. I hadn't seen any advertisement for it. I didn't know it existed until this other podcast talked about it. So I looked it up. Kidding is a 10-episode show from Showtime, which is sort of a US channel, featuring Jim Carrey, who, as we said, is in the original Series of Unfortunate Events movie. Jim Carrey hasn't been acting for a while because he's been going through a lot of life stuff. So it's interesting to see him come back, but it's more interesting to see him come back in a episodic show than a movie. Usually we see him play slapstick movies and things like that. So for him to come back into a TV show, I was like, oh, that's interesting, fun. And I just heard really good things about this show from the podcast without going too much into the spoiler territory. So I looked it up. Annoyingly, you can't stream it. You can't watch it easily in the UK. You can watch episode 1 for free on YouTube, and that's a good starting point. The show is about a fictional, would you say like a Mr. Rogers sort of?
Yeah. He's like a kids TV presenter kind of thing. Yeah.
So he's like a children's television icon. And the show he hosts use puppets and songs and like really simple themes to try and teach children about like just stuff, like what to do when they need, like how to eat healthy and how to learn their colors and learning the alphabet. It's all that child dramatic crap. And in this world of Kidding, Jeff Pickles, the main character played by Jim Carrey, Jeff Pickles or Mr. Pickles is that television icon, and he is famous. The show opens with him being welcomed onto Conan, and Conan is actually in the first episode being Conan with Steffi Trejo and Steffi Trejo, Danny Trejo.
Yeah.
Why did I say that? Danny Trejo, and instantly the first thing that happens is like Jeff gets out a ukulele and everyone recognizes it as Larry the ukulele, and the whole audience is singing along with this song. Like it's clear that his influence is just mind-boggling. But the show starts at a point where Jeff has lost one of his 2 children a year ago. It's the 1-year anniversary, and his 2 children were twins. He's now separated from his wife. He's living in a different apartment, and a year later he's still clearly struggling to process this information. But he wants to express himself on the show. Like he wants to be able to tell the kids how he really feels. He wants to be able to make the show about more adult themes. And this is all sort of covered in the first 15 minutes. And what the show is doing essentially, it is this journey through the complexity of having an emotional breakdown stretched over possibly half a year. And it's watching people manipulate Jeff so that he doesn't have a breakdown in a way that would affect the popularity of his fictional character. They're trying to maintain his brand. So Jeff is saying things like, I want to talk about death. And everyone around him is saying, no, you don't do that. Your brand doesn't do that. Jeff Pickles doesn't talk about death. He talks about colors and rainbows and how to get the bus to school. You don't take the cream out of the Oreo. You don't, the Coca-Cola logo never changes. We can't change Jeff Pickles. And surprisingly, for a show about a children's television icon, the show is super adult. Like Jeff Pickles is this golden heart human being who is always smiling and always believes in the best, and it's so genuine coming from Jim Carrey.
He's almost sort of still kind of a child himself as well.
Almost,
in some ways, yeah.
There's this childlike, like golden sort of intention in all of his actions, where he doesn't seem to have a negative. He doesn't seem to ever want to have a negative thought about anything. He doesn't wish harm upon the people who annoy him. He helps people out on the street. He genuinely gives his money to people who inconvenienced him in the first place. He's so rich but he's giving all his money away secretly to different people. And he's constantly just like, he's being told by people around him to go away, to deal with his problems, to seek help, to get therapy. And Jeff is just smiling and always sort of saying, saying to people, you're the negative one, you should think more positively. And it's so weird coming from Jim Carrey, who usually plays, well, historically we're used to seeing him play quite slapstick.
Well, but this is the thing. So it's directed by Michel Gondry, isn't it? Kidding.
I don't know.
I think it is. Well, we can look it up. We should probably fact check ourselves in this.
No, I've never looked up who the director is, and I'm on the IMDb now. Just can't.
Kidding.
See full cast and crew.
Dave Holstein.
Michel Gondry.
Yes. So
actually, she did 6 episodes. Someone called Jake. I thought you said. I thought you said Michelle.
Yeah, he's he's French or something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which was another Jim Carrey film. And
I'm just looking at it now. Yeah,
I mean this goes back to what we were saying earlier about comedians being really good in dramatic roles because they can fulfill. They can do that big, but they can rein it in as well for the dramatic stuff. And Jim Carrey obviously has had a lot of these problems in his own real life. I mean, the show is about the idea of someone having to keep a brave face on for the cameras, and that has been his real life.
That's the one-to-one that I really wanted to raise. There is the thing that Jeff Pickles is genuinely going through. Jim Carrey has recently come back from, and he brings it into this role so incredibly.
And it gives hints of Birdman in that idea of this someone who not only is already a great actor, but is effectively sort of purging a bad period of time through getting it out on screen. Down to the point where literally the plot of the first episode is him wanting to talk about the death of his child on TV, and it is a show about him talking about his horrible times on TV.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you've seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So that film is about this idea of not being able to get over loss in a healthy way, and I think that there are a lot of shades of that in this as well. I mean, Jim Carrey's character is who said he's almost a child himself in a way. He has this naivety to the world that people. Why would people want to do bad things? I don't understand why people would want to do bad things, and him coming to terms with the idea that that bad things can happen out of your control, or that people can do bad things and it has nothing to do with how good you are. I mean, I haven't seen all of it. I've only seen the very beginning of it, the first couple of episodes, but that definitely feels like a good, strong theme in it, which I think is quite interesting, especially through the lens of a children's show. This idea of teaching kids who may not understand that bad things can happen without your control, him having to learn that at the same time. So you've seen more of it. I
would say the theme floats away from that quite quickly.
Right.
I was saying, like, the show is surprisingly adult, and I mean that in the sense that there is partial nudity. There are characters just having sex throughout the episodes. In fact, at times there are the plot is telling you that there are child characters accidentally seeing things that they shouldn't have seen, and that comes into the whole family dynamic.
Yeah.
There's a really amazing moment, or small subplot, in which a woman who she's sort of fallen into debt. Her life is in disarray. She's reliant on drugs. She's poor. Her life is broken. And you watch a montage of her life over about 3 years, or I don't know, in an obscure amount of time, in which after going through like a traumatic event, she's just lying in her living room and Jeff Pickles is on TV. And she sort of is just blurred out and watching the show. But part of her starts to really listen to what she's hearing and it kind of engages with her. And then what you get is this amazing scene where the camera does this 360 spin of a single living room. And as the camera spins through the living room quite slowly, we see her doing a time lapse of her like living her life over the next few months. And suddenly, like, walls are getting painted. The quality of her clothes are improving. You see that she's like job hunting. You see that she's going out. You see that she gets a dog. You see that she renovates the house and gets a new kitchen. The layout changes, the TV moves, the sofa changes. And the whole time the camera is spinning, this is happening. Like, this is behind the scenes, but behind the scenes they were actually changing the set behind the camera.
I think I've seen this behind the scenes video.
So practically, in terms of production, it's incredible. But in terms of direction as well, one thing remains constant throughout the whole 360 spin, and it's the episode that she's watching on TV of Jeff is just playing. And it's obviously it's to speak about it's trying to give you this view of how Jeff Pickles' character is influencing the world more than just children's education, but he's uplifting people. He's bringing them back from like their lowest moments through his influential messages.
And that sense of style definitely feels like Michel Gondry's influence, because there's a lot of those really cool
there's visual moments,
cool visual stuff from his style, like that come through. That it's surprisingly inventive for in terms of like visuals and camera for a show that could have been very safe. There's sort of like magical realist moments, like the guys who try to strip his car for parts and then realize it's his car and they rebuild it for him and things like that. It could have been very safe, and I like that they didn't go safe. I like that they wanted to go out there.
There is so much they do in that show that you don't see coming. And obviously, you can't really go into this. I won't go into the spoiler territory because it is such an amazing show. It's 10 episodes long, and every episode has these mixture of emotions where you're sort of laughing out loud because Jim Carrey's kid is just calling him a pussy straight to his face because he's acting out, and doing elaborate pranks like getting beehives and then taking them to places where he doesn't want people to keep going to. You've got these really serious emotional moments where families are getting torn apart, nearly divorcing, cheating, kids are having breakdowns because they can't process the information and the parents don't know how to communicate. And then in the next moment you're watching just two characters have sex in a horse suit, and then it goes back. And then all the characters are at a dinner table having a screaming match, and they're just yelling the word "fuck you," just "fuck you" at a single character for 2 minutes. And it's all this incredible writing and direction that for me was completely and utterly unexpected, because no one's talking about this show. This show isn't on Sky. It's not on Netflix or Amazon.
I think Showtime has a bit of a bad reputation in America. It doesn't really have any kind of reputation at all in the UK. So
exactly. Which is such a shame, because this show deserves so much more attention than it's getting.
And so I think that our TV segment is likely to be that most months is going to be us bringing attention to shows that we feel like people have scorned in the past.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So if you were to sum up your reactions to this film in a brief sort of sum up before we move on to the gaming section, what would you like to say about it?
I mean, I just want to say it's surprising. It's really strong in the elements it's trying to execute. And it's I don't know. It's just the best surprise I've ever had. Every episode's 30 minutes, and you can go watch episode 1 on YouTube for free. Just look up Kidding episode 1.
Cool. All right, cool. So that was the TV section. Now we're going to move on to gaming. And if you have watched anything on my channel before, you will recognise my game this month, which is Hitman 2. And
Sorry, say that again.
Hitman 2. You ever heard of it?
No. Are you pronouncing that right?
Oh, I think it might be Mano.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, you're going to throw me off entirely on this one. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about Hitman 2, which I think most people will know what it is, but I was absolutely blown away with the new interpretation of it. So, but if you don't know what Hitman is, you've been living under a rock. Hit Woman 2. Hey, that's a meme that I don't want to bring into this show as well. So, if you don't know what Hitman is, it was a legendary series of stealth assassination games which effectively defined the genre. The premise is you play Agent 47, who is a sort of backgroundless clone. They sort of fill in the background a bit as they go along, but for all intents and purposes, he's sort of like a blank slate character who is the perfect assassin, designed to kill. And in the old games, you would go from level to level, killing targets that you'd been given, and you could be inventive in different methods that were around on the level. And ostensibly, they were sort of linear games where you would play a level, then you'd move on to the next one, then you move on to the next one. But the thing that people really loved about those games was the fact that there were so many different options to kill someone in those missions. So you could there's one that takes place at a redneck wedding in one of the old games, and you can dress up as the priest and place a bomb in the Bible, or at one point they're all firing rifles into the air and you can shoot one of them and no one will realise that it was you shooting them because everyone's firing a gun at the wedding, and things like that. And people love this. And so what was it, 2016 they made Hitman. It was just called Hitman, and it was effectively a reboot of the series in terms of gameplay, but in terms of story, it was a continuation. Although the story doesn't matter a huge amount in the games, effectively, it's just you are told to kill someone, you go kill them. But what I really loved about the reboot Hitman was that they decided to go with this premise of sort of episodic gaming, where instead of you playing a level, you do it once, you move on to the next one. If you're a committed gamer, you might go back and see what you could do. These levels were designed to be replayed. So you'd have less levels, but they were incredibly dense with opportunities. You'd have like so many different ways to kill them. You had the ability to bring gear with you, which would totally change the way you could tackle a mission. And they refined the mechanics so that it was easier to do the things you wanted to do. It was like smoothly played out, everything. And to entice people to try different things, they would have this challenges list, which was effectively the main way you play the game, which is it's basically an achievement system in game, but you'd have like 60 challenges on a mission, and they would be things like different methods of killing, or it'd be find this item in the map, or speak to this person or something. And that was the meat of the game, is just you going around and completing these challenges and unlocking extra items you can bring in, or extra suits you can wear when you go into the mission and things like that. But what I really loved about this idea of levels that you had to play over and over again and try it different ways was that it was almost a mechanic that fed into the theme of the game, because the more times you played a level, the more you started to recognise repeating patterns or specific routes you could take. And so you sort of, just by virtue of the repetition of playing the levels, you became the perfect Hitman, because you knew the maps inside and out. So by the time you were playing it for your 60th time to get that one super difficult challenge, you knew all the timings. You acted like you were executing the perfect hit like from an action movie or something, pulling off everything with like finite precision. And Hitman 2, which was released at the end of last year, is basically just an extension of the first one. What they did was they released a brand new game, but they allowed you to, if you owned the first one, you could bring all the levels from that game into Hitman 2. And it was more of the same, but the new levels are they've added mechanics into these new levels. They've added new items, new abilities, and things like that. And all of these are great. But one of the best things about that they've done with Hitman 2 is that they've really now moved to a focus of it being a living game that they continue to add things into. They started in the first game with this idea of elusive targets, and they did add a bit of, like, a few extra like missions and things into it as it went along. But in Hitman 2, they've really decided to make a focus on monthly additional content, so that even if you've completed the base game, you continue to get stuff. They do these monthly roadmaps that show everything that's coming up down the line, and I think it's an interesting situation of a game that not only it's worth buying Hitman 2 now in the state it's in, but it will continue to get better, and it also encourages you to buy Hitman 1 because they're still releasing content on those original Hitman 1 maps as well. And this is something that there have been loads of games as services games before, but I haven't seen anything as comprehensive as this in quite a long time. That they continue to support things that were released 2 years ago in a different game. Like now, in the next game in the series, they're still supporting those initial levels. I think if I did have a bad thing to say about it, it would be that they are fairly slow on the uptake of sort of responding to complaints from the community. They have had complaints about things like time-limited missions, so the elusive targets, which are time-limited kills. You only get one chance to do them, and once they're gone, they're gone. I quite like that premise, but I do agree that people are upset with the idea of them adding in like full missions, like the Holiday Hoarders mission that was time limited, and then taking that away, because in Hitman 1 that wasn't, kind of thing. And they've been kind of slow on the uptake of fixing some of these things, fixing some bugs that people have been talking about, fixing some problems, or bringing in certain elusive targets that people wanted. But I hope that they will improve on that over time, and that it will sort of slowly work towards becoming, I think in like 10 years or so, I think we will look back at this as one of the best, if not the best game in its genre. Yeah, you've played a bit of it as well, Jonas.
Yeah.
What are your opinions on Hitman 2?
I really enjoy Hitman. I've not nearly delved into some of those sort of like far-reaching mechanics of you as you have in terms of like doing those master challenges
legacy
and
stuff,
those
yeah,
classics and all the legacy stuff. But on the surface, I've played every level. I really enjoy. I think of these games. Each level is like a playground. There is
That's
so much
metaphor,
thought. Yeah. Like, when you think of sandbox, you think of a world that's like really open. You can kind of go do what you want, but these are really small, self-contained sandbox worlds where you are essentially, imagine someone just put you in a theme park, right? And you're told to go out and you can do what you want, and you've got 2 hours. Great. Rewind 2 hours, do it again. And it's like you get to see what happened at each ride, at each minute, and who was where. And did someone throw up on a ride and then go somewhere? Did someone accidentally stub their toe and then go get it bandaged? You learn so perfectly the routine of an entire complex, whether it's a hotel, whether it's an amusement park, whether it's like a drug den or something. And then, just like Jamie said, you are then placed in that environment and told to execute a murder. And the first time you do it, you don't know anything. So you're
definitely going to fuck it up.
Well, it's like you're figuring it out, like where the boundaries are. So you'll walk up to a door and you'll be like, right, am I as a civilian allowed in this room? And it'll tell you that you're trespassing. You go, okay, I can't walk in that room as a civilian. And you'll go somewhere else and you'll see that there's a chef's uniform laying on a table, and you'll think, okay, good for me to know that there's a chef's uniform there, because that will be useful. And you'll keep learning and you'll keep learning and you'll keep learning, and then you'll have these total recall moments where everything you learn, you then start the level from scratch. And rather than spending 2 hours finding out everything about the map, you spend 2 minutes instantly going to places that you shouldn't. That Agent 47, the character in this world, he technically should have no idea.
But it's almost like a practical version of having a briefing, right? They could have easily had a thing at the beginning of the game where you have like a briefing from Diana, who's the handler in the game, that just says there is this here, this costume in the kitchen. There is this here. There's this there. You should probably enter this way. And instead, it's almost like you are giving your own briefing in your previous versions. By the time you go through on the 20th time, you effectively have all that information in your head as if you've been briefed by a handler, which I love about it. It's a mechanic informing the theme of the game, basically. You become the master assassin through repetition.
Yeah, it's phenomenal how good it feels to go into a level that, like, it could be a level that you played 5 minutes ago. It could be a level that you actually haven't played for 3 months. But going into a level and instantly going, right, I'm going to the cloakroom, I'm putting on this costume, I'm going upstairs, that guard will wave me through, the camera will miss me, I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to go to this ledge, shoot him in the head, and I'm going to walk out, and there's not going to be a single eyebrow raised, because I know where everyone was at that time, what everyone was doing at that time, and I know through practice and trial and error that this is going to go really well for me.
And this is the interesting thing, is that they've done a very good job of both appealing to people who don't necessarily want an intense challenge, because there's always easy ways to kill people on levels, but they also appeal to those people who desperately want a challenge, in that they have higher difficulty modes that, unlike other games where it's just like everyone takes more damage, in this it actively affects the mechanics. So in the highest difficulty mode, all of a sudden if you shoot someone and take their costume, it's got blood on it now. You can't wear that costume anymore. If you were holding a gun dressed as a guard, normally in the normal difficulty you'd be fine, but in master difficulty, if it's a gun the guards wouldn't normally have, now you're not allowed to hold that gun, which is such a great thing, because you effectively now, that extra difficulty level is a whole different way to play the game. And then they throw it all on their head, because the whole game is about repetition and learning how to do these things. And then they say, right, elusive target time. You don't get, if you kill that target, you're locked in now. So you don't get to do a tester. That's it. You kill her, you're done. Or you kill him, you're done. Like, and that's, it sort of appeals to every little possible facet that the stealth assassination genre could appeal to in one game, which I love about it.
Yeah, and it's definitely like, it really separates, like, between you and me, we know this. When you do the elusive targets, you often will get Silent Assassin title card, whatever. You will get 5 stars, you'll get a much better score than me, and it's because, I mean, it's for 2 reasons. One, your knowledge of the game is very impressive. Like, you know the mechanics, you know the map, you know how things are going to play out, and usually you've done the research beforehand.
Yeah.
And it shows, because you do the elusive target, and even though you only had 1 chance, you gave yourself the best possible score that you could get. I will then go in and do the elusive target with, I think I know this map. Yeah, I know the areas. And I know roughly what's going on. And I will do my planning, and I will figure the area out, and I will eventually execute the kill. But I will still not get anywhere near your score, because I haven't taken into account that, like, crap, I got seen by a camera. Now, I didn't get seen killing anyone, but because I've got seen by a camera, my score's going to be lower, and I don't actually know where the camera's recordings are kept. And if I try and do that, I only put myself at a huge risk of being killed and discovered. So I just, like,
But the great thing
settle.
about it is it isn't any less fun if you do it that way. Like
No, it wasn't. I really enjoyed it, and then I just found out in hindsight that I could have done it better.
but it's the sort of enjoyment scales to your level of ability. So I've played a lot of the new Hitman games. So I get that sort of heart-pounding thrill in the elusive targets when I'm trying to pull it off flawlessly. But if you know you can't, if you know you're not likely to do that, just pulling off the kill at all can have the same level of excitement. Like, and it's impressive a game that doesn't require you to. I mean, I've been playing a lot of WoW lately, and World of Warcraft is one of those games where it expects you to keep pushing to higher difficulties, and if you're not, you're kind of losing a big chunk of the game. And I think I find that appeals to a certain type of gamer, but it cuts out those people who don't necessarily want to be punished at a higher difficulty level to experience some of the game. And I think that Hitman is really good in that sense that you can experience it on any level and have the same amount of enjoyment and never feel like you are being forced to push yourself through something above your abilities just to experience a chunk of the game, which I love about it. Like, anyone at any level can get something out of this game, and the skill ceiling for the highest difficulty is so high and the skill floor is so low that you never feel like, oh, you're being handheld at this bit and then suddenly you're thrown in the deep end at this bit, kind of thing. You get to choose your difficulty as you go.
Exactly. And a lot of the challenge of the game doesn't necessarily come from how am I going to kill this person without being seen. It's also like, how am I going to even get into that building? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not even allowed to walk onto that guy's garden.
Yeah.
So what do I do? And that you need to, you have to work your way through the layers of security and complexity and your social status, because you're not dressed like a person who's invited to the party. So you have to find a way to get yourself invited to the party. And these are all little micro layers that you could forcibly skip, or you can take the time to learn the sort of the, I guess, almost the socially correct way.
I mean,
like,
it's one of those funny games. It is a funny thing where you when talking about creating your own difficulty, that the majority of the levels, well, maybe not the majority, but a lot of the levels, you could finish by just walking into the room the person is in and shooting them in the head. You could do
absolutely.
that. And you create your own difficulty by saying, I'm not going to get seen. I want to kill them in this specific way with the big swordfish, or like by dumping them onto the racetrack or something. And once you put that restraint on yourself, you've created your own difficulty. You can. I got into the habit
that this is the hill you must die on.
Yeah,
you know?
I got into the habit of when I was playing, not necessarily on stream, and I might do when we go back and we start trying to complete all the challenges and missions, but I got into the habit of creating almost like a menu of challenges I wanted to complete on my run. So I go through and I go, well, I could definitely do that kill on them and that kill on them in the same run, and then I could probably collect those challenges around there as well. All right, this is my run. I need to hit all of these specific things throughout my run. I've created my own little separate difficulty that someone else may never, ever do that run. Like,
yeah, exactly. Because you're picking, it's almost like you're sort of picking your level objective, your gameplay experience, like from a tapas style menu.
Yeah.
Sort of going, ooh, well, I think I'm going to go for the sniper headshot whilst they're having a cigarette on the balcony. And I'm going to need to get a sniper rifle, and I've got to make sure that they go out for a cigarette, which you have to do by making them stressed. So that's another layer of complexity. And I think I'm going to kill the other one with an explosion in the safe room.
Yeah.
And then you have to go into that level and figure out, how do I make those scenarios happen, because they are not readily available to me. I cannot just, they're not in the safe room, and they're not going to go to the safe room unless I make something happen.
And this whole idea of the sort of piecing together challenges and things really leads very well into this games as a service thing that they're doing, the consistent small content patches, is that because they've built these levels like sandboxes that can have chunks added into and more challenges added into, you're getting new menu items every month. You're getting the elusive targets, but you're also getting, I think later on this month, there is a map that exists in the game, and they're not adding any extra elements or anything to the map. They're just adding a bunch of new challenges based around this shaman character, and all of a sudden that map hasn't changed mechanically. Nothing has been added to that map. They've just said, you know what, this thing you could have already done, now you get a reward for it. Go for it.
Like,
and now suddenly you want to go in and
think
do it.
about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I really do love. I do like the idea of the elusive targets. I never really cared about it back on the PS4, but having it here on the PC, having the online community, and having friends who we all discuss how we killed the secret target on the one-time chance. Like it becomes a community discussion point.
It's that water cooler conversation where you're all on a WhatsApp chat just going, so how did you kill her? Oh yeah, well I saw her like going down and having a cigarette down there. Oh yeah, I saw that too. I thought that might be a good opportunity. And then Jonas tells us that he missed 5 headshots and
Takes us 1.
But yeah, we've been talking about this game way longer than I expected to. So just my little sum up is that I think Hitman 2 is definitely pretty much at the moment the best in its genre, the best shining example of the stealth assassination genre, and I definitely think it's worth buying. And also, if you have bought it and you're on the fence with buying the first game to get those initial legacy pack missions, I would say it's definitely worth it as well, because they're continuing to add stuff to those levels despite them being 2.5 years old now. But yeah, so now we're going to move on to Jonas's game. So what was your game for this week, Jonas?
My game for this week is going to be Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So you and I, Jamie, have both played 2 games a lot in the last 2 months: Hitman 2 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which both have a theme of find and kill a target. Assassin's Creed Odyssey does this very differently. I think in the beginning of the series it was a little bit more Hitman-esque. It was about infiltrating a city. It was about bypassing guards and line of sights. It was about figuring your opponent, your enemy's like walking route, or where they were going to be generally. Where was the area where they were the least offended? Where could you climb into a room and still be hidden and get to them? You know, it was about sort of figuring out your map and then finding the path of least resistance, essentially. Assassin's Creed has changed a lot since then.
Yes.
When we got up to Syndicate, which is the one in London, we were seeing these very copy and pasted games of auto attack combat, press a single button to counter, kill your enemies, go to this building to reveal more points on the map, go to this building to get a fetch quest, go to this building to beat up some people, and there was a story somewhere in the middle of that. And it got a bit samey. They made Origins after that. Origins sort of rewrote the mechanics and the gameplay, and it was set in Egypt, and it received really good feedback, sort of enjoyed sort of all over the place, and a breath of fresh air for the series. And now they've got Odyssey, which is set in Greece. This is the first time that they've let you pick the gender of your main character. So you will play the same story no matter what you pick, but you'll either pick a girl called Cassandra, in which her brother Alexios is the villain, or you will play Alexios, in that case the sister Cassandra is, well, maybe not the villain, but certainly a villain. And it just swaps their roles, and otherwise the game doesn't change much around that. It's interesting. They've brought in loads of elements that you don't expect from an Assassin's Creed game. There's a lot more role-playing in terms of developing your stats and your skills and deciding whether or not you're going to be able to disappear from your opponents in the middle of a fight, or whether or not you're going to be able to fire 3 arrows at once, like with guaranteed headshots. There are elements of, you can decide if you're going to romance characters, you can build a crew, your armor now has numbered stats, which is a little bit sort of more like a loot drop game like Destiny, or like similar to the armor system from God of War. Your weapons have traits, you can get random buffs, you can get animal companions. it's really changed, and the game is mechanically dense. Jamie, it was you who came into this game and sort of was baffled by how many different mechanics they unloaded onto you.
Well, it's weird. I mean, it's made by Ubisoft, and it definitely feels like they've gone every department of Ubisoft who's made a game, like Far Cry, like I don't think Shadow of War is made by Ubisoft, is it?
No, it was Warner Brothers.
Yes, but it definitely feels like they've looked at every good open world game in the past however many years, and they've gone, we'll have a bit of that. We'll have the strongholds from Far Cry. We'll have the fast traveling and open world from Skyrim. We'll have the mercenary system, which is basically the orcs from Shadow of War, like
Nemesis system.
That's the one. Yeah.
We'll have romance and like sexy dialogue from Mass Effect and Dragon Age.
I mean, it also kind of feels a lot like Witcher in that respect, in that like it's basically a
absolutely.
lot of the romance options are basically like, want a shag? Okay, this character never turns up again. Like
it's more like The Witcher than you think as well, because one of the main things I enjoy about the game is how infinitely I am able to, like how easy it is to keep playing. You will go somewhere on the map, and on your compass up top, so you're not using a mini map, you're using a compass, a lot like Skyrim, to figure out what the next sort of hotspot is near you. And you'll see something to the west and you'll go, it's pretty near, I'm going to go there. And you'll go there and it's a cave. You go in the cave, you find some treasure, you beat up some guys. Great, you've done everything in a cave. Ooh, look, there's something north of me, just 100 meters. You go run there. It's a temple. There are some cultists or something. You beat them up, you get the treasure, and you keep doing this almost like this connect the dots on your map. You keep finding the next point of interest and you're like, I'm going to go there.
It's a really great example of sort of open world pacing, in that everything is far enough away that it's a challenge, but just close enough that you could do it before you go to bed.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
And it's so wonderfully dense. I think one of the biggest strengths for me about this game is the world. The cities are I say thousands now. There are like I don't know, like 50 different cities in this game, like towns, villages, cities, locations, habitats.
Well, it's basically all of Greece, isn't it? It's basically all of ancient Greece and all the islands.
Exactly. It's all that. So the scale of the game is massive. Massive enough that there is a lot to explore, but scaled down enough that it wouldn't take you too long to get from where you are to where you need to go if you just beeline it. Every town is unique. All the mountains are unique. The people are having conversations on the street. You go to a town where it's like they're having the festival of Artemis or something, and the NPCs are dancing where they should be dancing. Someone's vomiting in a pond. People are lying in the bushes in the distance, and you can tell that they're having some sort of sexy time. You go to another village, and this village is on the brink of war or poverty. And the tone is different. Everyone is sick. People are fighting on the street. Beggars are everywhere. There are wild dogs going stray. There are abandoned houses that are on fire. And it is that, but just multiplied.
I mean, you never get that sort of Skyrim sense of, oh, every guard has the same 4 lines. Like
exactly.
You actually feel like people are living, breathing people who live in these towns and may never have spoken to someone from the other island or something.
Exactly. Like it has weaknesses, and the weaknesses are exactly what you would expect from a AAA Ubisoft experience. But it has so many strengths that go completely sort of underappreciated.
I'll happily go into the weaknesses, because I while I enjoy the game and I have put a fair bit of time into it, I definitely feel like it is one of those games where the want to make it dense almost makes mechanics fight against each other, because you have situations where, so they have this mercenary system where if you get a bounty, mercenaries can turn up and fight you, and you have this system can sort of interrupt story moments. So you have like right at the beginning of the game, you are tasked to kill this Spartan general, and when I was doing it, I fought the general, and we go through this like dramatic moment where he's like dying, and you have this deep conversation and everything, and then you come out of this sort of conversation cutscene, and you're supposed to be in a place that's guarded by this whole of the Spartan army. There's no way, like, the only way you got here is because you managed to convince them you were on their side to get up and get your target. And then just this dude turns up, this mercenary dude turns up and just tries to fuck you up out of nowhere. And it's this perfect example of having loads and loads of systems and relying on the systems to create the gameplay, but because they're all procedurally generated systems, they can't necessarily get tone right. Like, there's something to be said for a game that doesn't allow a lot of freedom, but has a clamp on that tone. Those old great single player story games like Half-Life and things like that, where you may not have much freedom, you may be being funneled down a tunnel the entire time, but at least the theme and the style and the tone of the game and the tone of the story makes sense. You end up with a coherent like experience by the end of it. I would not say Assassin's Creed is coherent in the slightest, in that the tone will just change randomly, that just the nature of you having to travel across such large distances, and so therefore just dipping into things as you go along to keep you entertained, means that keeping a coherent track of what's going on at any one time is just a nightmare. And even if you were keeping track of the story, it's absolutely batshit. I haven't played any Assassin's Creed games since the first one. This is I played Assassin's Creed 1 and then I played this one. And the first one, it had this interesting sci-fi element, and this one feels like that magnified by 200. And at every moment they go, look at this crazy, wacky sci-fi thing, and you go, I don't have any idea what's going on. But that central gameplay loop is satisfying enough that despite all those things, you will still be playing it for 100 hours. You'll complain the entire way, but you'll still keep playing.
And like, yeah, I think if you try and go into the story and the narration, like the writing and what the game is trying to do in terms of like its narrative, just go away. That's not why I think this is a good game at all. Assassin's Creed has a super long series, and it screwed up its own story at some point, and they've realized that, and they've retconned it, and they've tried to, they've changed perspective, and they've changed the way that they're doing the main story. None of that is why this game is so just so appealing. I've put over 100 hours into it, and I am not doing any of the story missions. I'm constantly deciding to go find new areas of the map and go do their individual side quests, and then I'll find out that actually there's a legendary creature I can go kill, so I'll go have a 1.5 hour fight with a legendary boar that keeps killing me.
Oh my god!
Also, I can just so that my character, Cassandra, will sleep with a huntress, or something like that. And while doing this, you will find mini camps that you can destroy. You'll find prisoners that you can release. You'll find like new legendary armor sets and equipment. You'll get on your boat and buff out your crew and take out some pirate ships and dive into the ocean and kill some sharks and get some treasure. And it's like the game, all those mechanics make for this never-ending avalanche of just like fun, kind of just like mindless, easy fun.
I think this is the thing, right? Is that I talk about how that procedurally generated aspect of the game, which is so heavy, destroys any kind of coherent tone. But I get that the point was, on their behalf at the least, I feel that the point was that it wasn't there to build a tone, and in fact the tone is not important at all. What matters is just that intense satisfying gameplay loop. I mean, Steltec says that in chat that the Ubisoft formula is very good at stringing you along from side mission to side mission. I would say that this game is the sort of ultimate distilled form of the Ubisoft formula, in that it is these very satisfying gameplay loops built out of these mechanics with these like very satisfying short quest lines, and the actual grand scheme of the thing, the actual grand design of the whole thing doesn't really matter. What matters is those sort of satisfying small chunks that you go from one to the other to the other to the other.
I mean, yeah, it's the moment to moment that I really enjoy. And just I wanted to highlight as well, I went into the game wanting to have a lasting experience. So I put it on hard mode. And I am so thankful I did that, because the combat in this game it's a lot more rigid, in the sense that you have very clearly defined like attack animations that don't instantly snap to the nearest enemy, that can be blocked. Like your enemies have shields that have really well defined hitboxes, where if you shoot an arrow at them and it hits the shield, it hits the shield. If you shoot an arrow at them and it hits them in the shoulder, it hits them in the shoulder. Like, you know, it is quite
and that's good for that satisfying sense of combat, isn't it? That I found combat a bit frustrating, but I never felt like I was fucked over by like a hitbox or a glitchy moment. It always felt like it was just that I wasn't that good at fighting, kind of thing.
It's like, given what the Assassin's Creed series has sort of been suffering from in the last few games, this is really refreshing to have this really kind of restructured combat system. By playing it on hard mode, I am constantly at risk of death from 2 or 3 bad dodges or blocks. And then you have this nemesis system where if you are raiding camps, or you are stealing items, or you are fighting people in public, someone's slowly adding a bounty onto your head, and you yourself are a mercenary throughout this. So eventually your bounty is enough that a mercenary wants to come after you. So you'll be fighting a normal group of 3 enemies that shouldn't be a problem, and out of nowhere, like, an arrow will hit you and a lion will attack you, and you will discover that Samantha the lion is now hunting you and right behind you and so ready to kill your ass. And
I kind of felt that mechanic was a bit overtuned, maybe.
You know what? Maybe. But it makes for, in terms of that moment-to-moment aspect, it turns predictable interactions and kind of like clear-cut win or lose situations into utter and complete chaos that like kind of make the game almost more memorable for it. Some of the mercenaries are really throwaway. Like, they come to you, you kill them really quickly. You're like, just another day. Some mercenaries, because they have that that sort of Terminator tenacity to them, where no matter where you are, they're looking for you. So you'll be trying to do a mission where all you need to do is like escort a character back home, but now you're sitting in the bushes because there are 2 mercenaries, one walking the path in front of you and one is hunting the woods behind you, and they're both looking for you. They don't know where you are, but they know you're nearby. And you're in these sorts of situations where you don't know if you want to risk it.
Well, I think that is a good example of this. What I'm talking about there, about it being difficult to keep a tone with these procedural generated things, and that you'll be doing a mission, and it will be a story mission. They'll have obviously set it up so that there's certain elements that need to play out in a certain order for you to get the story and you to get the theme of the zone. And then a mercenary turns up and kills a dude that you're supposed to be taking somewhere, or like you're supposed to be having a fight that's important to the story, and then a mercenary turns up and suddenly you're no longer actually doing the story fight, kind of thing. And if the gameplay wasn't so satisfying, and it wasn't so satisfying to kill that mercenary, I'd be pissed off that I didn't get an appropriate ending to that storyline because this dude just turned up and fucked me over.
I mean, my take on that is almost it almost just kind of makes the world feel more real, because it just means you committed a crime earlier, and just because you're doing a story doesn't make you exempt from the in-world consequences.
Yeah, that's true.
Which has a complete and utter damper on the writing that Ubisoft want you to experience, but it gives you a very unique experience in terms of what I did in this world came back and bit me in the ass in a way that is unique to only me.
Yeah.
So I won't go on about it any longer.
I was about to say, give us a quick sum up of what you think of the game, and then we'll go on a short break because this has gone on way longer than I expected, and we've still got all the films to do. So we've got a 5-minute break to get a glass of water, but sum us up.
Yeah, okay, cool. It's surprisingly fun given its history. It's incredibly dense and guaranteed to provide you with hours and hours and hours and hours of entertainment.
Perfect. That sounds good. Okay, we're going to go on a short 5-minute break, maybe even less than that, where I can quickly go grab a glass of water, and then we'll come back and we'll do the films and the super secret segment, which Jonas doesn't know what it is, and then we'll be finishing up for the thing. So stick with us. We'll be back in a moment with some films.
Bye.
We are back. I think everything's working. Cool. Hello and welcome back to the show. We're moving on to movies now, after having a brief break. So I'll be going first. And my film for the moment, well, one of my films for the moment, is the movie The Favourite.
I'm just going to highlight, by the way, I'm going to call you out when it gets to 10 minutes.
Well, no, hey, don't stifle my creativity, all right?
You're going to do 3 films.
Yeah. This is the second half of the show.
I'm gonna time you.
Okay, so all right, well, fine. The favourite is a film by Yorgos Lanthimos. I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm reading off his IMDb page, and it is this is the guy who made The Lobster, which I don't know if you've seen The Lobster, but it was a very strange film about sort of social expectations on people set in a world where everyone has to get a relationship, and if they don't, then they end up being turned into an animal. And those themes, this idea of what's expected of a person, and how uncomfortable it can be trying to fit in or not fitting in, definitely feed a lot into this film, The Favourite, which is one of the Oscar noms for Best Film this year. The Favourite is a sort of fictionalized account of Queen Anne's reign towards the end of her life, and it is mainly about what's the name of her character? Probably have looked this up before.
It is mainly about
Abigail.
Ladies.
No, it's mainly about a character called Abigail, played by Emma Stone, who is the cousin of Lady Sarah, played by Rachel Weisz. Is that how you pronounce her last name?
I thought it was Vice.
Or Vice, okay. And Rachel Weisz is this sort of she's like a lady of the realm. I guess she's married to a lord who has the ear of the Queen, of Queen Anne, played by Olivia Colman, to the point where she's effectively running the country, because Queen Anne is sort of degrading in mental health and physical health towards the end of the film, and is very much a child in the way that she acts and the way that she sort of responds to other people. And so Lady Sarah is sort of controlling her via pretending to be her friend, and Abigail arrives at the palace, wanting to work at the palace as one of the women working in the laundry or something like that, and using her connection to Lady Sarah as her distant cousin to get herself into that. And while she's there, she sort of makes herself useful to Lady Sarah as sort of a confidant and friend. And Abigail's station starts to rise in the court, and eventually she starts to feel that maybe she could take a similar position to Lady Sarah, depending on how she could politically maneuver. And I won't go any further than that, because I definitely recommend you watch this film if you can, still in the cinemas or when it's out on DVD or something. But I absolutely loved this film in a similar way to when I watched The Lobster. At the time, I felt very... I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, and the more I've thought about it since then, the more I've enjoyed... You're about to eat your dinner. The more I've thought about this film, the more I like it. Great. Basically, apart from it being shot fantastically and everyone in it acting amazingly, Olivia Colman is outstanding in this, as she is in basically everything she does. If Olivia Colman is in a film or TV show, you should pretty much just watch that TV show or film. But so is Emma Stone. She's fantastic, and Rachel Weisz. They're all brilliant. One of the things I love is Yorgos's, the director's, ability to create a sense of uncomfortableness in a film. Throughout this film, there is the central theme is sort of the sort of uncomfortable rise to power, and this idea that how much are you willing to give of yourself, and how much you're willing to effectively punish yourself to achieve your goals. And not only does the story achieve that, but the way that it is shot, uncomfortable angles, like brilliant sort of dark lighting obscuring various parts of the of the frame, and like messy sets. I guess messy is the wrong word, but sort of visually busy sets which show the sort of stressed mindset of a lot of the characters in the film, and a great soundtrack which is fairly sort of oppressive in moments, and one of the reasons I would say you should definitely watch it in a cinema with a great sound system, because there are points where the music is sort of deep and loud enough to almost press down on you in a way that sort of the characters are feeling sort of pressed down upon. I think that this, more than many of the other films I've seen recently that are ostensibly dramas, I feel like this makes you not only understand the motivations of the characters, but feel their everything about their situation throughout it. It is also a very funny film, despite being very dark. Yorgos has a fantastic sense of humour. There's a lot of sort of absurdity in the film, despite it being effectively a historical film. It's interesting. A lot of people I found talking about it sort of casually confused it with Mary Queen of Scots, which has come out or is coming out, I know, soon. People sort of assumed that it was going to be in a similar vein, like a historical recreation, but it's absolutely not. It has a lot of time anachronisms, people doing modern dances, people talking in very modern ways and things like that. And I feel almost that the backdrop of it being Queen Anne is literally is the sort of least important part of it. It could be any kind of powerful person who's being sort of abused from behind the scenes. But yeah, so you've seen the film as well, haven't you, Jonas? If you take a moment from eating your dinner to please don't just stare right into the camera while you chew.
Feel for me. Okay, yes, I've seen The Favourite, absolutely. I agree with a lot of what you said. I definitely haven't dived into a lot of the film like you have in terms of I didn't really notice or experience the soundtrack. Maybe I should go back and try and appreciate that. I was really surprised when I went to go see it. I think so my girlfriend is instantly drawn to any film that sort of has elements of elements of sort of like progressive elements, and in this particular area we're talking about same-sex relationships.
I mean, I don't want to go too much into that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there is definitely this overtone of three women in a love triangle. That's like that's kind of how this feels. That's what the whole point of The Favourite is about. It's about two women trying to vie for the attention of another one.
Yes.
And it's not always the same woman at the top of that triangle.
And also
it
this
changes.
And also this idea of toxic relationships, in the a relationship can start from a point of genuine like for another, but it can also devolve into this sort of power play, in that there is almost I don't think there is a single relationship in the entire film that isn't toxic in some fashion. It's all people.
Nothing was healthy.
It's all people attempting to achieve goals and sort of sacrificing healthy love in the process, and the ability. I mean, I'm trying to avoid talking about the ending, but it is definitely a brilliant look at this idea of can you what is worth sacrificing to reach that point, and those who are already at the top, can they really, is there any enjoyment in being at the top? I mean, Olivia Colman's character, Queen Anne, she is the most powerful woman in the country, but she has been infantilized by everyone in her life. She is being controlled. She is effectively just a puppet for anyone who gives her any kind of affection. I mean, the real life Queen Anne had loads and loads of miscarriages, and they play on that in the film with the idea that she's adopted a bunny for every child she's lost and named them after the dead children. And she is desperate for affection because everyone around her treats her like walks on eggshells. She is the queen. She is the most powerful woman in the country, and she's desperate for anyone who sort of sees her. And it's interesting, people trying to sort of rise to her station and sacrifice lots of stuff to be in her position and have her kind of power, and losing a lot of their humanity and their love in the process to get to this point, to get to the same level as a woman who is already miserable, is not enjoying being in that position at all.
Absolutely, yeah. There's certainly it's like there's this massive element of everyone wants the life that the queen has, but at no point does the queen seem to want the life that she has.
And she is the only one who doesn't have a choice to be there.
10 minutes, by the way.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I mean, so my final wrap up on that. We're just going to speed run the end of this podcast, then, I guess. My final wrap on that was I would say that it is a very interesting film, and I think it's worthy of that spot on the best film Oscars list, as I might feel some others may not be. I definitely think it's worthy of that spot on the best film list because it's a very interesting look at a semi-accurate period of history, and I think the most accurate thing about it is not necessarily the time period or what goes on, but mainly this idea of political maneuvering and this great ability to make you feel the pain of the characters and feel that like how oppressive the hunt for power really can be on a person. Anyway, I've reached my 10 minutes, so Jonas, it's now your turn. What film did you want to talk about?
I'll quickly have a quick interlude. What was the top film list you were referring to?
The best films for the Oscars.
Is it the Oscars nominee? Okay, because I thought there was some list that I hadn't been aware of.
No. So the best film Oscar noms are. Oh no, this is not. I don't just want a list of them. I want the actual. Or has the Oscars? No, the Oscars hasn't already happened, has it? Okay,
Oscar
here we go.
Nominations 2019.
The nomination. Oh, fucking gallery. Why is the internet so shit now?
Do you mean so Best Picture?
Yeah, Best Picture. Green Book, A Star Is Born, Black Klansman, good film. Roma, Bohemian Rhapsody, Vice, Black Panther. Oh, is it? Oh, and The Favourite, and If Beale Street Could Talk, and
yeah. Okay, interesting. Cool. I've heard interesting things about Vice, but I'm not going to talk about that now.
No. Well, we'll move on to your film.
The film I'm going to talk about is it's a film that came out just before Christmas, and man, am I so glad this film is in the world now. Spider-Man, Spiderverse. So again, I don't always know the behind the scenes behind a lot of these things, so let me open it up on IMDb. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. It's an animated film, not animated in terms of 2D cartoon, but also not animated like any Pixar film or Ghibli that you've seen recently. The style of animation in this movie is entirely unique to itself, and I can't talk about it to you. I insist that if you are listening to this and thinking, oh, I don't know anything about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, just do a quick trailer watch. Not because I think you need to watch the film, but because I think you need to understand what the style of animation of this film is. Because it puts a lot into context. The film was fantastic. The film was incredible. It was really fun. There are lots of Spider-Man movies, starting with Tobey Maguire and then Andrew Garfield. There's a lot of animated adaptations of Spider-Man. There are video games. There's the original comics. Spider-Man has been interpreted in a huge number of ways, and this Spider-Man film is unique. because it doesn't try to tell you the origin story. I mean, it does, but it plays on itself when it does that. It's not about white boy Peter Parker losing Uncle Ben, discovering that great strength comes great responsibility, great power, whatever. It's about someone who is kind of new to anyone who's never paid attention before. It's about a kid called Miles Morales. He is like this. He's a black kid in America. His mum is, I think, Mexican. He's young. He's trendy. He's hip. He has all of that social skills that Peter Parker doesn't. He isn't this massive child genius like Peter Parker is. He's an entirely different character. And in this story, he is Spider-Man. He becomes Spider-Man. Peter Parker exists in this world, but Peter Parker at the very beginning of the movie dies. And he doesn't pass on his powers. There isn't like a passing of the torch. Miles Morales gets hit by a different freak accident spider bite. And what then ensues is a series of events that leads him to meet other Spider-Men from other dimensions. And this is really where that animation thing comes into play, because you get a spider woman who's from a world with purple neon lights and like noir overtones and like sort of like vaporwave sort of stylings to her city. And she comes into this world and she is animated at more frames per second than the other Spider-Men. She has a like a fluidity and a movement to her that is different to the other characters, and the things that she does and interacts with are given this purple and stylistic tint. You get noir Spider-Man, you get a alternate Spider-Man who is a layabout with a fat belly, who is canonically Jewish and no longer in a relationship with Mary Jane and half depressed. You get Spider-Ham, a Spider-Man who is a pig.
But he's like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon style, like
exactly
pig.
Like he's an Acme Warner Brothers kind of character.
Yeah, he can pull big hammers out of his pocket and things like that.
Yeah, and it physically, in this world, other people are looking at him and not understanding how he's capable of doing the things that he's doing, because he's bringing his own universe's laws into his character. The movie has them all go on this adventure. We see villains that we've seen before. We see some villains that we've seen before, but they're reinvented or redefined in really surprising ways. And the show doesn't bend down on its knees to try and explain all this to newcomers. It just goes in and it shows you everything that it's got with its palms wide open. And what you're left with is this amazing visual 2-hour journey with an amazing hip hop soundtrack.
One of the things on your point of like it doesn't hold your hand or like take you through like explaining the history of it, I think that's one of its real strong points, is that this is a Spider-Man movie for people who have experienced Spider-Man. This is a movie where a big chunk of the humor is based upon the fact that you have seen the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, or you've seen this, or you've seen that, or you know who Spider-Man is. That running gag of, the story of Spider-Man, which is them each explaining their origin story. It is a running gag because Spider-Man is such a part of the cultural consciousness of anyone in the Western world, or maybe in the world, kind of thing.
Yeah. That
this film can only exist because Spider-Man is so ubiquitous. There's a joke in it where Miles Morales is wearing his own homemade Spider-Man costume to the funeral, to the public funeral of Peter Parker, and he says, Mary Jane says something about how we're all Spider-Man, and he says, he's talking to me, and then someone next to him says, I think it's a metaphor. But there's this idea that Spider-Man in that world is such a part of the cultural consciousness that no one would blink at this kid in a spider costume in the way that no one would blink about it in real life. But this kid actually is Spider-Man kind of thing.
Like, yeah, where the popularity of the superhero is true within its own world as it is within ours, the viewer.
Yeah, and I think it's a great like play on that.
Yeah. The show does so many incredible things with its characters. It takes villains that you think you know, like Doc Ock, for example, and you are reintroduced to them in a way that you did not see coming.
Yes.
The first villain of the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire is Green Goblin. He's in this movie, but he's not a man in a weird green suit. He is a literal 30-foot tall flying demon with fire breath.
He is a goblin.
Yeah, and the film doesn't stop and look at you and say, "Hey, just so you know, this is that villain, Green Goblin, but he's a demon in this world." No, you just see him.
There's no explanation. There's no like, this is how he became the goblin, or this is the deeps he came from. It's just
and it just keeps that momentum up in everything it does. I think the writing is hilarious. It's genuinely, when you watch a modern day Marvel movie, you just get the jokes that land and you're like, that was a pretty good joke in this 1.5 hour film. I felt like the Spider-Man film was just delivering those kind of almost consistently. Spider-Man Noir, I think, is the highlight of the film, voiced by Nicolas Cage. A Spider-Man who lives in like World War II or something universe, where he spends his time swinging through like World War II New York fighting Nazis or something. And in his world, he comes from a world where his family has been like tortured and murdered, and he's been through so much darkness and pain. He comes into this world and he instantly he's sort of saying to the audience, like, the only thing I feel is the wind. It's just like, oh, I don't feel the flames by my fingers when I light the match anymore. I don't see colors like you do, because he comes from a world that is literally black and white and devoid of all happiness and emotion and fluffy thought.
Yeah.
And it's done comically, like so perfectly comically.
This is a film that could only have been done in animation, and it is some of the most meta humor of any film I've ever seen. In the idea that like literally every aspect of the animation is either some kind of visual joke, or they've decided like, it's animation, we can go as far as we want on any aspect of this. Even like ostensibly human characters are exaggerated and like
Kingpin is literally just
Kingpin is like the size of a car. Like it's ridiculous. And I think what I really like about the fact that they when they made this film, they said, right, we're going to do an animation, but we're really going to make the most of the animation medium. It's not
exactly.
It's not like a Pixar movie where you go, well, yeah, I mean, I get it's a nice Pixar movie, but you could have done like it's not doing anything that you couldn't really have. I don't know. It's not doing anything like, that you need animation for.
Exactly. Like as a guy who watches a lot of animation, Japanese anime, Pixar, and animated films, there's very little that can surprise me when I see animation. I can be very impressed. I can look at an animation and go, "Oh, wow, that was fucking amazing." But I knew that the studio was capable of that with the right budgeting and the right amount of time. This movie comes out, and it's one of its major plot is the merging of universes. And you have characters glitching and distorting and twitching in and out of their universe in such an incredible 3D way. Like I can't imagine what it must have been like to replicate that exact visual. It's just so perfect. And then going into how the different characters are animated as well, just they all, like, despite having a room filled with 5 or 6 Spider-Men, they are literally being animated in different ways.
And still it feels seamless. You never feel like someone is out of place, despite the fact that one of them is a Warner Brothers cartoon pig.
Despite the fact that they are actually almost all out of place,
Yeah. Okay, so because I didn't realize how late it was, so I'm not going to do I'm not going to do my other two movies. But if you summarize this one, we'll do our final secret bit, and then we'll finish up.
If you are the kind of person who says animated films are not for you, shut up and go watch Spider-Man into the Spiderverse. If you have an appreciation for black culture and music as well, the soundtrack of this film is a goddamn treat, and I keep listening to Sunflowers by Post Malone since I watched this film. Go watch it. It's the best that Marvel has been for a long time without like any of that cinematic universe crap that a lot of people don't want to get involved in.
Very good. Cool. So I didn't realize how late it was, so I'm not going to do my last two movies. Or in fact, I wasn't actually really going to do Glass because I can't really say anything about it without spoiling it. So what I will
can you just tell me, did you enjoy it?
What I will say about Glass is you should go watch Unbreakable, you should go watch Split, and then you should watch Glass, because it is a great progression in a filmmaker's skill. It is very enjoyable, and it is a satisfying conclusion to a trilogy which, knowing M. Night Shyamalan, could have gone very wrong. Okay. So, I will talk about Bohemian Rhapsody another time. I did want to talk about it because it's interesting, because the longer it's been since I watched it, the less I liked it. But maybe I'll talk about it next week, and if we have time. Anyway, so the final thing is that I was thinking when we came up with this show that in all likelihood we would only ever pick films we like. And I think it would be more interesting if we had to review a film that we didn't know if we were going to like or not. So, what I did was I found a random Netflix movie picker. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick a random movie on Netflix, and then we're going to both watch it before next month's show, and we're going to review it on the show. This website where allows you to set a minimum user rating on how shit you want the movie to be.
No, you're not allowed to turn that on.
I'm setting it to 0%. The minimum user rating is 0%. Any age rating, any genre, only films, not TV shows, because I don't want us to have to watch 40 episodes or something. Yep. And any age group. So it could be a kid's film. Oh, now this website gives you 8 selections, so I'm gonna do it, and then I guess someone in the chat, the first person in the chat to pick a number, that will be the movie that we watch. Hopefully, I think this is only stuff on UK Netflix. But,
so are we both going to watch the same film?
We're both going to watch the same film, and then we're going to come back and we're going to chat about it. So we can either find a hidden gem, or we can suffer through something in solidarity together. Yeah. So post a number in the chat. The first person to post a number in the chat gets it. If no one posts a number, then Jonas, you can pick a number. But I'm going to make the random selection now. So I've got my films here.
Okay, and I just want to clarify as well. Can you please then tell me what the other 7 movies could have been?
Really? I will do. So Steltex picked 5. So Oh my god.
Oh no.
So it's an Emma Stone film, according to the screenshot here.
It's not necessary. Okay, yeah.
The rating is 2 stars out of 5.
Fuck.
The movie we are going to be watching is Aloha. So
Bradley Cooper.
So the description is: returning to Hawaii for a satellite launch, a defense contractor quickly develops feelings for both his former flame and his alluring military escort.
Okay, you know what? This looks like it's going to be the most nothing film that. Like, okay, I'm glad I'm watching, because at least I feel like it's going to be watchable, but it's just going to be like a waste of time.
Well, yep. But it's got nearly 3 stars on IMDb.
IMDb says it's got 5. Are we looking at the same film?
No, I'm looking at it on this new on Netflix page, but I think it reduces the 10-star rating down to 5 on this.
Oh, okay, because it's 5.4 out of 10 here. So as far as I'm concerned, it's slap on in the middle.
Yeah, it's a bang on average film. So
Bradley Cooper, Emma Stone, Bill Murray.
so so next month, so the first Tuesday of next month, we will be coming back to review 6 things that we like, and then Aloha. So the other possible options we could have had would have been Cloud Atlas, Top Boy, Adam Sandler's Big Daddy, Coffee Annie Barakahi. I have no idea what that is. To the Bone, which is a Netflix movie, Bait, or Stealing History. But we're not going to be watching any of those things.
I almost wish Cloud Atlas had been picked because I kind of want an excuse.
I fucking hate Cloud Atlas. So I'm glad I don't have to watch it again.
The thing is, I don't think I'll enjoy it, but I want an excuse to watch it.
Yeah. My ex absolutely loved it, and it was her favourite film, and she made me watch it. And afterwards, I was like, that was a shit film. And then it suddenly dawned on me, oh, this is her favourite film. I probably shouldn't just shit on it. Yeah. Anyway, we're not watching any of those things. We are watching the 2015 hit film, Aloha. So I am excited to get if you've not watched BBC America's Dirk Gently, go watch season 1 of that. I have watched that film. And in my head, I was thinking, if they do a season 3, that's when I'll review it on this show, because I love that show.
Is that the one with Elijah Wood?
Yeah.
Okay, because I have been wanting to watch it, but I have not. So thank you for the reminder, Steltec, because I genuinely want to get round to watching that at some point.
It's a really, really good show. And with that, we've come to about 2 hours, which is about twice as long as I initially intended this to be. But
2 hours, and we cut a third of the content.
To be fair, our normal streams are 2 hours long. So if this ends up being 2 hours every week, I'm fine with that.
So am I. I'll make sure that I eat beforehand.
Yeah, that would probably be good. Oh God, Jonas, luckily this bit of the video is going to get cut off of all of the things. Well, I can explain that now. So, thank you for watching our first pilot episode. It was a little bit rough around the edges, but I think we were getting better as we go along, and hopefully next few months will be even better. I hope to get some graphics and stuff instead of just my hastily made logo that sits on the left hand side or right hand side of the screen. What we're going to be doing with this now is that I am going to cut the individual reviews up for videos to go up on my main channel, which is youtube.com/The Bunyip Man. Also, the entire stream will be going up on the Bunyip Gaming channel, which there is a link to below this stream. And if I can work out how to host it, I'll also be making an audio podcast version of this as well. And that's probably the preferred method of watching it, so that you don't have to see Jonas eating. But other than that, if you enjoyed this and you're not already following and you want to keep up, please follow us on Twitch. Normally on this channel, it's normally me playing video games like Hitman and World of Warcraft and things like that. I don't know what we're playing tomorrow. We stream every Tuesday to Friday from 8 till 10 p.m. GMT, unless something comes up. And sometimes we'll do additional extra streams on top of that, depending on when I'm free, because we all have lives. Not great ones, but we do.
I just got to point out, by the way, Jamie, that you completely underestimate the mukbang community. Throw a hashtag mukbang into every video.
I'll make a video that's just mukbang, and it's just the one clip of you opening your mouth and shoveling food into it.
And watch it skyrocket.
But with that, we are done for the evening. So thank you for watching. Come back and join us tomorrow for whatever we do. Follow if you want to keep up. Bye. Oh, God. Bye.
Bye.